You're listening to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans.
I'm really happy to be here. It's a pleasure for me.
Fonte with a scooping header.
I would like to make the most of with this opportunity.
It's infield to Mane, 25 yards out. Lovely ball for Bella. Onside, 1-0. Buffon shot. Oh my word.
He ran around a bit like Bambi on ice. Really very, very embarrassing to watch.
And now, your host, Matt Markstone. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans. My name is Matt Markstone. No matter where you are, no matter how you may be listening, thank you for making the show part of your day. I hope that you enjoy it. And although the domestic season is done, Mark Hughes has signed a new 3-year contract. That is fantastic news to get that out of the way nice and early. We have the entire summer to look ahead to players and things like that, to sort out the squad, to sell who we need to sell, to bring in who we need to bring in, to loan out who we need to loan out. And all of that. But none of that has happened yet. And so this episode is brought to you in conjunction with Tactics FC. If you've never heard of Tactics FC or you're not familiar with them, you can follow on Instagram at Tactics_FC. And the website basically gives you a place to go for all of your fantasy news, for all of your kind of discussions. There's a podcast directory. There are a number of things at the website that will give you lots and lots of insight. It'll give you a chance to speak with other people who maybe have questions, to share your ideas and all that stuff. It really is a wonderful website, a wonderful follow on Instagram and also on Twitter. And the links to all those things are in the show notes. So do not hesitate. Go and follow them now. And what Tactics FC has done is they've gone out, they've found a bunch of different podcasts and brought them all together to do. Each show will do one preview of one World Cup squad in an attempt to kind of give you an overview of the tournament in the run up to it. So this is my contribution to that. I spoke with Chris Lash, who is on Twitter at Right Bank Warsaw, who covers the Polish league, knows a lot about the national team, lives in Poland, kind of understands things much better than I do. And you'll figure that out shortly as we start to speak. When we get to that interview, but it was a huge honor to be able to do this. It was a lot of fun to be able to do. And I was also very nervous in doing it because obviously I'm speaking about something that I know far less about, but I did manage to work Jan Bednarek in there a little bit. And if Chris's voice sounds familiar, it's because way back last summer when we brought in Bednarek to the squad, I talked with him about what he could possibly bring. And you'll hear Chris's thoughts on Bednarek now, and overwhelmingly positive. And you'll hear what he thinks about the squad. So we'll cover the manager, we'll cover the squad, we'll cover their chances and what Poland's looking for from their team going into the World Cup finals. So let's jump straight into that, and I'll talk to you on the other side. We'd like to welcome to the Southampton Delivery Podcast for this special one-off World Cup preview of the Polish squad. Chris Lash, he's on Twitter at Right Bank Warsaw. He's got a website, Right Bank Warsaw, and he's here as the Polish expert to kind of help me out and help me kind of preview this Polish squad and talk a little bit about the World Cup. So, Chris, welcome to the show, and thanks for doing this for me.
Thanks for inviting me. I hope I do it justice the Polish squad and stuff. So thanks.
I think we'll be fun. I think this will be fun. And I've had a good time looking up some of these players and kind of trying to wrap my head around this massive squad, which we'll talk about. Of course, it's got to go down to 23 players. It's just not quite there yet. But before we do that, you are very heavily involved in the extra class. I hope I've said that correctly. And kind of analyzing it, and you have a podcast and a TV show, and you write about it. But can you tell us a little bit about that before we kind of jump into this, just so people get an idea of who you are and what you do?
So my background is I'm actually an academic. I'm a historian. I moved to Poland, taught English 2003 with my MA over here, then did my PhD in the UK. Moved back over to Poland in 2011 And in 2012, I basically started a blog about the Euros that were over here, and then it kind of went in various random directions, and I now basically just write about Polish football, mostly via Twitter, but I've also got a pod, which I got a couple of guys on it, and we have regular guests, and really enjoy that. As you know, as someone who does a pod, it is a really, it's just, I mean, it takes a bit of time to edit it and do various things, but in general, it's a really fun thing to do because it's like talking with guys in a bar or in a pub, but you're not being very rowdy, obviously, but it's just a really nice activity. And I also had a TV, it was like a Facebook show which was put on by Eurosport in Poland, which unfortunately finished in February for various reasons, but not my fault. but it was that was really fun. I did that in Polish language. I had guests on, like a half an hour thing, relatively successful, and everything was so basically I kind of doing a lot of different things around Polish football, but my main focus on the pod is the actual Polish league, but I obviously know quite a lot about the national team as well. So
yeah, well, plenty of at least in the preliminary roster, plenty of players playing in the Polish league on the roster, and we'll kind of have to see if they can kind of stick around and make the final 23. But before we do that, and talking about a little bit about history and stuff like that, Poland hasn't made the World Cup finals, I think, since 2006. So Lewandowski never played in the World Cup finals, has amassed a ton of goals for the team and for his club teams as well. And I assume he's going to be kind of the main figurehead. He's going to be the one kind of expected to score goals and things like that. But I guess in Poland, what does it mean to some of the fans and things like that they're in the finals now, and that this team, what are the thoughts that this team could actually kind of really do something, and they're kind of relying on them to do that in terms of maybe national pride or something like that?
Well, I think it's a big thing. I mean, I think for every country getting to the World Cup is a big thing. I mean, for bigger countries, it's more like expected, but at the same time, incredible amount of excitement around getting to the World Cup. For Poland, I mean, as you were saying, I mean, it is interesting that Lewandowski is, he's such a key figure, iconic figure really now. Someone who's 30 actually in August, so he's already getting up there in terms of age. But he's never played in the World Cup. And the Euros, even though in some respects the Euros is more competitive because all the teams are on a similar level, the World Cup just has that special kind of something, excitement value around it. So even though he played a couple of years ago in the Euros, this is a massive event for him. For a number of other players like Kuba, Jakub Błaszczykowski, who's now 32, I think, nearly 33. People like Piszczek, who's playing still at Dortmund, who's also 32. So Glik, I think, is 30. So there's quite a few players who have been around for a long time and have been successful internationally, and this is their real chance to show the world really that they are, world class or at least international class players. In terms of for Poland, it's a massive thing. They've not been there for 12 years, and not only that, in 2006 and 2002 they were knocked out in the group stages. I think they lost. If I'm wrong, I'm not sure if I'm wrong or not, right or not, but I think they lost the first two games in both of those tournaments, so the third match didn't matter in the group stage. So they beat the US actually in 2002 in the last game, but it didn't matter because they were out already. So really, you got to look back to like '86 when Poland last made it out of a group stage, when Bednarek, the famous Juventus and Roma player who now is the Polish FA president, was a key player, and a couple of other big players. So okay, for 32 years since they made out of a group stage. So that means you're talking, a whole generation of people who've never seen Poland make it out of a group stage at a World Cup. So this is a massive thing.
And it means a lot of the players on the team have never seen Poland move out of the group stage.
Yeah, exactly. I think only. Actually, I don't even know if anyone's over 32 years old in the squad. There might be one player. I don't know actually.
Yeah.
I think everyone's under 32 actually. I can't. Maybe Fabianski's 32. I think Fabianski's the same age. So yeah, basically all these players have Błaszczykowski, Kuba was 1 year old when Poland made it to the second round in 1986. So
it makes me feel a bit old talking about them because I am the same age as them, but they are out there still playing professional football and going to the World Cup, and I'm sitting here talking about it. So much different.
I was 6 in 86, so that's the World Cup that I can. There's like a tiny little very, very, very brief kind of memories. I think the television might have been on and I was probably running around annoying my dad or something. But it's a long time ago. So it's a big thing, and football is Poland's national sport mostly in terms of financing. So the way that it works over here is that it's normally cities that build the stadiums, so clubs don't. So not only is it a big spectator sport, but it's also the most heavily financed sport by the state and the local kind of governmental bodies. So it's a massive thing.
All right. Well, they haven't been to the World Cup final since 2006, but they have been. They were obviously they played in the Euros, quarterfinalists. What was made of that kind of this group kind of having that performance and going that kind of deep into the Euros? Was that expected, and has that kind of set the expectation for the team to go and do well, even though during the Euros Lewandowski didn't really fire as much as you would have hoped you would have?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of teams played a couple of defenders or put 2 people on him almost at times. So he was really not really marked out of the game, but I think he had a lot of attention. So that sort of gives him a bit of an excuse for why he didn't. I think maybe he did score. I think he scored 1. I keep forgetting. I think it was 1 goal, but in general he wasn't great. But in terms, I think going back to what I was saying before, these players, a lot of these sort of not golden generation, but players who are really achieved stuff, are really getting up there in terms of age. So it's crucial that they do something. But also what happened 2 years ago, they did pretty well, quite well at the Euros, even if they weren't playing, scintillating football. It was pretty, it wasn't boring, but it was pretty, it wasn't very open. It was quite conservative the way they played. And so, I think it really does make people excited and make people expect something. And at this one, but I'll probably get onto it later. But it's difficult to predict what's going to happen because it's a pretty kind of, I'm not saying random group, but quite a diverse group, and it could go a number of different directions, I think.
Yeah. So going through qualifying, Poland finishes top of the group. They have been ranked as high as 7th in the FIFA rankings, which take them for what you want. I think they're currently 10th. The last time I checked, which, they are kind of a well-respected team. I think a lot of people look at them and think that they can do something in the tournament. Like you said, their group is difficult to predict. Some of the teams that are in there, Colombia, Senegal, you would expect them to, I don't really know what to expect from Senegal. Colombia is decent. They like to play some good football. Japan will be super well organized, so it'll be kind of interesting to see the game plan and how it shifts with Poland doing that. But they topped their group in qualifying. They conceded 14 goals, which I think is the most of any team that finished in the top 2 in their group. Is the defense a worry for you going into this tournament, or what do you think the manager is going to do to kind of shore that up as they move forward?
It's a difficult one. I mean, it's interesting because in the World Cup qualifiers, in the Euro qualifiers as well, before 2016, they also scored a lot of goals and weren't particularly good defensively. And then when the final came around, finals came around, they were really good defensively and didn't score many goals. So I'm not sure how much qualifying will have an impact on the way that Poland plays at the tournament and how many goals they'll score. Obviously, defence, it is a bit of a worry that they let in that many goals. 14 is a lot. But as I said, I'm not sure how much impact the qualifiers will have on the actual World Cup, because Navalka decided to play relatively conservatively at the Euros, and kept things tight, and was wasn't particularly exciting. So it's difficult to say, but there's a good chance that Poland will also play relatively conservatively at the tournament and at the World Cup, and then I don't think the defense is gonna be as much of a problem. But let's see.
Well, I mean, the quality of opposition that you're facing in qualifying is not always obviously the greatest, and I think that there are certain levels of teams that you come up against. There are some that are just you're just going to run them over, and then there are some that are small maybe and maybe don't have the star power, but they are very compact, they're very organized, and they'll make you break them down, and maybe you beat them 2-0 or whatever. And then there are other teams that they're going to run into, like for instance Colombia, who are going to make you play, and they're going to also challenge you, and so that will be different. And once you get to the tournament, I think there are going to be that disparity isn't always going to be there. They got Japan, but they're still going to be organized, and they're still going to make you work a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole thing. Is that look at the way that England have qualified for pretty much every tournament really easily, especially the last 10 or 12 years, and then when the finals come along, it's a completely different team. Everything's very tight and not many goals. And I mean, the one thing that sort of might suggest that the World Cup, that there might be more goals at this World Cup, and Poland's group, it might be a bit more crazy in terms of that, is the fact that in general, you look at the top leagues now, no top teams can defend. There used to be the fact that there used to be quite good centre backs, left backs and stuff, and now it's just, look at the Champions League this year, just really ridiculously bad defending. So who knows? Maybe in the World Cup in general, maybe in Poland's group, there will be a lot of goals. Maybe there will be some crazy matches.
Well, so let's talk a little bit about the manager. You mentioned him a little bit earlier, but Adam Navalka. He obviously managed the team to the knockout stages of the Euros. He managed Krakow to the Polish title a few years ago, I think, and he played for Poland and things like that. But in terms of kind of trusting him to be able to lead the team, his contract runs to the end of this tournament. What's the are people happy with him and how he's kind of got them through qualifying and things like that, or are people in Poland kind of looking at him going, we should go elsewhere, or what's the feeling around him?
Well, I think, although maybe I'm wrong, he's at least is in the top 2 or 3 kind of longest sort of serving managers for the Polish national team in their history. He's been in charge since November 2013, so almost 4.5 years, and quite a lot of pressure from the Polish media and the Polish public. So to be in charge for 4.5 years is a real success. The average length of time in the Polish club game, in the top league, is for a manager is about a year. So he's done a great job, and I don't know his actual record, but it's a very, very high winning percentage, and so there's hardly any criticism of him, I'd say. Okay. He doesn't do things in a controversial way. He very private person, someone who hardly talks to the media. When he talks to the media, it's very sort of a bit boring, really. Not very many interesting things. I think that his kind of strength is the fact that he's very good interpersonal. He respects every person who's in the squad. He has a very personal touch in terms of discussing issues around what he expects from them, how things are going in their private lives, and all that kind of stuff. So he's almost like a father figure for the players. Also, someone who experienced big tournaments before. He played 35 times for Poland or 34 times, but he got injuries, so he could have played more. He was one of the best young players in the 1978 World Cup. So he's someone who really has respect within the Polish game. People didn't expect him to do so well. I mean, he didn't do that well in terms of club football. He was Górnik Zabrze coach for like 3 or 4 years, I think, and did very well there, but no massive successes. He was at various periods. He was a coach in Wisła Kraków, as you were saying before, but only sort of filling in when bigger managers were either fired or there were problems at the club. So before he took over, there were very low expectations, but he's managed to create a side which plays, again, at least in qualifiers, quite attacking football. He's managed to harness the power of Lewandowski. Lewandowski is now a top goal scorer for historically in terms of the Polish national team. But before Nawałka took charge, basically Lewandowski wasn't scoring properly enough for the national team. I think since he's been in charge, since Nawałka's been in charge, Lewandowski's got 34 goals in 37 games or something like that. I don't know the exact figures, but he's done fantastically well. And that's partly because of the way that Nawałka works and the way that he respects players and gives them space as well when they need it and all this kind of stuff. So, as an individual who, publicly, I find him very boring. Nawałka. He never says anything interesting. He never says anything controversial. He never, for someone who's covering the Polish national team, there's nothing exciting about the way that he is as a personality. But what he's done is really fantastic in terms of the results he's got, but also the atmosphere around the squad. So he's done a very good job.
All right. Well, let's talk about the squad and about, you speak of him, being pretty good with the players. He's got a lot of players to be very good with on an interpersonal level with this kind of big, 35 man preliminary squad that he named initially. We were talking before, he's cut it down now to 32, but he's got to be down to 23 by June 4th. So he's got a lot of kind of cuts to make. And I'll just kind of point out one of the things that I noticed when looking at the squad. 11 of the players on that 35-man squad play their professional football or their club football in Poland. And the rest of those guys are playing outside of the Polish league, outside of the Ekstraklasa in various leagues, mostly in Italy and England and Germany. But let's start at the top with the goalkeepers, and we'll kind of work our way through the thing, and we'll kind of see who you think is gonna be around when it comes time to go to the finals and things like that, and maybe some players to watch outside of kind of maybe the obvious one or two. So let's start up with the keepers. You have Fabianski, but I think from my understanding, it's basically Szczesny's job to lose. Is that kind of the going kind of feeling in Poland?
It sort of goes up, and I mean, basically, Nawałka likes to play players who play at their clubs in general, and Szczesny has been in and out, I think, as far as I know, in terms of the season for Juventus. But Fabianski's more of a stable keeper. Szczesny is more of a shot stopper, really, I would say. But Fabianski, I think maybe I'm wrong, I think he might have been player of the season for Swansea in the Prem this year, but I might be completely wrong. But he's been very good for them. So to me, it's a real toss-up between Szczesny and Fabianski. Probably Szczesny is the better technical goalkeeper. In terms of making saves. So maybe he's just ahead of Fabianski, but they're very even, I think.
You did mention, though, that he wants to play players who are getting game time and playing, and he left off some players who were either out through injury for a lot of the season or maybe just weren't playing consistently enough at their various clubs. And you mentioned that Szczesny obviously was behind Buffon at Juventus, and there was some, from what I read, there was a little bit of worry about him choosing that job and going there to be a backup at kind of the age he's at, and being, he's played for Arsenal. He was the keeper for Arsenal for several years. He played well at Roma. It looks like now there's a good chance he's going to be the keeper going forward at Juventus. But like you said, Fabianski didn't have a terrible season. He had a pretty good season despite Swansea being relegated. So that will be good. Of those four that I have on the list there, who, which of those guys is gonna be the one to get to go? Is it going to be the guy that plays for Ipswich? I won't try to pronounce his name. I'll let you do that. Or what do you think?
Well, Białkowski's had a great season for Ipswich. He's played all the games. But Skorupski has been in the international setup for longer. So it's whether Nawalka basically accepts someone who has been in the setup for a long time but hasn't played as much this season, or someone like Białkowski, who's played a lot but at a lower level and he's only started to be called up this year for the national team.
Okay.
So again, it in some respects it's a toss-up, but I think probably think Białkowski's gonna be not gonna make it.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, thing about it is that Fabianski and Szczęsny are probably not going to get injured.
Right.
So the third keeper doesn't matter that much. So I think probably Skorupski. I think Skorupski's going to make it.
Okay. All right. Now getting into the defenders, and the entire reason that I've chosen the Poland squad to preview is the man that I put at the top of that list right there, Jan Bednarek. Obviously, we spoke. Our first ever interaction was over him and that transfer coming over from Poznan, and he was one for the future. He actually did get in the team. His first match was he played in a back three against Wolves in the EFL Cup, and we got smoked. And he looked terrible. And then he kind of went to the under-23s for a while, was thrown in at the end of the season when we're in a relegation battle, and he was fantastic. So, I'm a firm believer that players can develop and get better, and they don't always have to be the player that we initially see. I don't think he's quite ready to be a stalwart in the Polish defense or in Southampton's defense, but it was nice to see him get a call up based on his performances towards the end of the season. My feeling is, though, that he's probably not going to make this final squad. But going through there, you have some veteran kind of defenders that are around. You have guys like Glick, who's playing in Monaco, things like that, players that we would have recognized from watching other leagues and things like that. Going across, maybe there's some talk of possibly playing a back three, but if they're playing a back four, who's going to get the start? Maybe, and I know right back has been a bit of an issue, or sorry, left back has been a bit of an issue. You don't have a natural kind of left-footed player that can play there. But who would you go with based on the players that he's selected for the preliminary squad?
Yeah, I mean, one of the big issues historically, really, last 20 years, is that Poland hasn't had a good left back. It's a difficult position, I think, to fill all over the world. First of all, people aren't naturally left-footed often, right? Okay. Second of all, it's sort of a position where you have to sort of be between, especially in modern day football, a lot of left backs are expected to also be attacking, and even wingers. Almost, they do both jobs, right? So I don't think it's just I think it's a common problem actually around international football. But I think that the reason why Nawalka has started been playing a 3-5-2 recently is partly because of that left back issue. So the idea is to play obviously three centre backs. Then you can play a left. The person who play on the left hand side can double, as a left back and a winger, but can do more work as a winger, right? And then the left-sided centre back can cover over for them. So I think in terms of who will play on the left. Also, I just quickly say I think that Bednarek is going to make it. I think he's going to make the squad.
Do you?
That
makes me feel good. I like that.
Yeah, and the reason why is because he did so well in 4 or 5 games in the Premier League, which is a really challenging league, and I think that the level is higher than in Serie A. So I think he'll probably make it. That's my feeling. I think that Navalka likes him and stuff, but he might not. I mean, if you look at so again in terms of left back, I think what he's probably what he's gonna do. I think he'll probably play 3-5-2. That's the way I see it. And he's been playing it a lot in friendlies. So I think probably the person who'll probably play on the left is probably actually a midfielder, and that will be Maciej Rybus, who plays at Lokomotiv Moscow. He is more of a winger. He's played it in a left back before in the past and made a lot of mistakes, but he's had a pretty good season. He won the league with Lokomotiv Moscow in the Russian Premier League. I think that's probably what's going to happen. In 2016, Poland played a player which is almost impossible to pronounce if you're not Polish, but Artur Jędrzejczyk, Legia Warsaw player. But Jędrzejczyk is more of a sort of centre back or even a right back, really. But he played a left back because he's quite flexible, adaptable. But he's had a very bad season for Legia. They won the league, but he's had bad performances, been quite petulant. So I think of the more experienced players, the ones that might go are someone like Jędrzejczyk, but might not go, are someone like Jędrzejczyk, and we'll probably come to a bit later, but a guy called Sławomir Peszko, who has a lot of caps, but is sort of not really on form. So left back, I'd say either Rybus, if he's going to play 3-5-2, or potentially he'll play someone who plays for Górnik Zabrze in Poland, Rafał Kurzawa, who has had a great season for Górnik. He's probably might go to Sampdoria actually this summer, and he's a lot of assists. So he's kind of a left-sided player, quite slow, not really a defender. Then obviously you'd have to have a strong guy on the left of the centre backs to play there as well. But the other option as well is also to play Kamil Grosicki, who plays for Hull, because he can sort of also play on the left. But then again, he's a really attacking player, Grosicki, and someone who, again, a lot of it depends on what's going to happen with Kuba, because Kuba he's not played at all for Wolfsburg in the spring, and normally Kuba would play on the right. Okay, but he might not make it. So if he doesn't make it, then Grosicki will probably play on the right and someone like Kurzawa on the left. I'm sorry, maybe that's a bit too confusing. I'm trying to explain.
No. I'm following.
Yeah. In terms of centre backs, I think if he plays a 3, I think it'll probably be Glik. I'm sure Glik will definitely start. Pazdan will almost certainly start. He had a great Euro 2016, still playing in the Polish Ekstraklasa with Legia. And the third one, I think, is probably going to be Tiago Czarnek, who plays for Spal, who I think stayed up in the Italian league, but maybe I'm wrong. Quickly checks the Serie A table. So anyway, apparently he played pretty well towards the end of the season for... They did stay up. They just stayed up. And he had a really good performance against Juventus, where they drew 0-0 Spal. And so I think he's actually Brazilian. He's really Brazilian, but he's got Polish background. So played in the Polish league for 4 or 5 years. So I think that it'll probably be Czarnek, Glik, and Pazdan. At right back, stroke right wing, it's probably Piszczek, I think. Probably Piszczek, because as far as I know, he's had a very good season again at Borussia. So I think that it would be, then probably Rybus on the left or Kurzawa, probably in centre-back, Glik, Czarnek and Pazdan, and on the right, probably Piszczek.
Okay.
Probably Piszczek, potentially Błaszczykowski.
All right.
Kuba. Yeah.
I mean, moving forward into midfield, and this is, I think, where there is talk of who else is going to score goals and where is the creativity going to come from when you come up, when you play Japan, who's going to break them down versus when you come up against Colombia or Senegal, who's going to, be able to support Lewandowski going forward. So looking at these midfielders, who makes that squad? We've kind of looked at the wide players, but maybe who's going to play in central midfield for this team?
Yeah, I think that even though he's not had a very good season, I think that Krychowiak, on loan from Petr to while he was at West Brom, and I think that he'll definitely start just because he was such a key player in the Euro 2016, and he's part of this kind of five or six key core players for the national team. They all good friends, and I think that he'll definitely start. Okay. I'm almost certain of it. Alongside him, as the other kind of sort of sitting midfielder, really, because I think they'll play two sitting midfielders and one attacking midfielder, and I'll get onto the attacking midfielder in a second. But probably next to him, I think it's going to be either Linetti, who plays in Sampdoria, played for Sampdoria in Serie A, he's had a good season, or Mączyński, who plays for Legia. Mączyński's been injured in the spring, for quite a lot of the spring, so he hasn't played very much, but he's a pretty tested player. He played in the Euro 2016, did well for Poland, relatively well, and he's a pretty stable player, whereas Linetti hasn't played that great for the Polish national team, but at the same time, he's young, he's playing in a very competitive league. So I think that it's probably going to be Linetti alongside Krychowiak in the centre. And then, the player who's certain to start is Zielinski, the Napoli attacking midfielder. So what will happen is Zielinski will be the number 10, the one in front, behind the front two, I think, and he's really the key player for Poland. I'd say more than Lewandowski, and I'll explain why. Basically, there's been a lot of discussion recently about the English national team and about how Wilshere, is that player who can play key passes, but, some people hate him. I find the hate for Wilshere a bit over the top. I mean, okay, he's done a couple of slightly irritating things, but we all do. He's a young guy, so what, this incredible over the top fascination with, the imperfections of young men. It's just, I don't get the hatred of him. The problem is he's, injury prone. That's the main issue. England don't really have a kind of a player who can play key passes, who can, unlock defenses. And Zielinski is that player for Poland. He very technically gifted. You've probably seen some of these goals that Napoli have been scoring, like on social media. They sort of, they show on Twitter the videos, these beautiful, like long, cross the pitch goals which start from the back. And, Napoli on the Sarri played great football. And Zielinski, even though he doesn't play all the time, he's been the person often who's played those wonderful, like last, those balls, assists for goals. And it looks like, for example, Marek Hamšík, the Slovakian guy, great playmaker, who's going to leave Napoli this year. So that just shows that probably Zielinski is going to play an important role for Napoli next year. And he's crucial for the Polish national team. And I think in some respects, just as much of the fact that there's a lack of a left back that meant that Nawalka changed the formation to 3-5-2. I think that he also changed it because 3-5-2 suits Zielinski, because it allows two defensive midfielders to, give him that freedom to operate behind the back two quite freely.
And looking at that, obviously Lewandowski going to be up there, probably a starter, probably a lock to start every game, and most likely captain the squad. Is Milik gonna start alongside him, or who else might challenge Milik for that second spot?
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear it's going to be Milik. I mean, people were worried because he had a second, I think, ACL, a different ACL, cruciate ligament. People were worried he wouldn't get back to full fitness, but he's come back for Napoli, and he's scored some important goals towards the end of the season. He's got a great left foot. Him and Lewandowski really work together very well. He missed some very bad chances at the World Cup the Euros 2 years ago, especially against Germany in a very tight game. But I think that he's quite good in the air as well. I'm pretty sure it's going to be Milik and Lewandowski together up there.
And I guess just moving towards looking slightly at the group, we spoke briefly about it earlier, but the group is tough to predict, and I'm not good at predicting things even when I know the team. So let alone, I'll be honest, I haven't watched a whole lot of Senegal this year. So
me neither, to be honest.
I do know, we have a few Southampton players that are former Southampton players possibly that will be involved in the group. So looking at that group, you would expect Poland to get through. My guess would be that it would be Colombia and Poland going through. I think you would expect to win the group, even if it's not by a huge margin. But after that, you're likely to face England or Belgium in the next round, depending on how their group goes. If you get knocked out at the first hurdle, the first knockout stage, obviously probably be disappointed. But would that go down as a failure, or if you come up against a Belgium in that situation, is that just kind of an unlucky draw, and you just kind of have to take it?
Yeah, again, I think probably Poles think that the team should be favourites to at least come second in the group. Again, Senegal, I think, kind of not an unknown quality. They've got some very good attacking players, and I think that's the thing that I'd be worried about. Obviously Mane he's a great player, and one of the better players in the Champions League, which was last night. I'm not sure when this is going out, but he was great. And I think they've named about 12 strikers in there, or something like that. It was like 10 attacking players. So I think Senegal could potentially win the group as well. I think that Japan are the weakest, not just in terms of the players, but also they changed their coach recently, and I think that's caused quite a lot of kind of problems in the squad and stuff. So I'd probably say Colombia and Poland equal favourites, Senegal wild card, and Japan probably. Yeah, I wouldn't expect them to, but who knows? Yeah, the second round. So Poland's expecting at least a second round. If Poland doesn't make it, then I think there's going to be serious, negativity and depression here, and lots of soul searching and all that stuff like you get after every tournament exit. If you get to the second round, I think if they lost to Belgium or England, I think people would be a bit disappointed, but I think they would probably understand it, even though England are theoretically weaker than they have been for a while. I mean, sort of untested players or not very highly capped players. And to be honest, I don't know what's going to happen with England at this tournament. I think it could be great or it could be awful. I have no idea. In terms of, obviously, Belgium is incredibly star-studded kind of squad. But, it's sort of a strange coach, Roberto Martinez dropping Nangolan from Roma and all this stuff. I think that they could also be vulnerable. So potentially Poland could make the quarters. To be honest, because I knew that it was either Belgium or England in the next round, I've hardly looked at who Poland would play in the quarters. I've got no idea what would happen in the quarters. But I think that people would be very disappointed if they go out in the group. Slightly disappointed in the second round, but they'd accept it probably, especially if they play relatively well. Poland plays relatively well. I think in the final, if they make the quarters, that would definitely be a success. And unless they get absolutely pasted in the quarters, people would be, I think, relatively quite happy, like 8 out of 10 happy if they made the quarters.
Well, if you get England in that first knockout round, all you have to do, play 5 at the back, play 7 at the back, 8 to 10 doesn't matter. Take them to penalties and you're through. Yeah, and that's just the way it goes.
Yeah, it's going to I'll be obviously divided loyalties as an English person living over here, but I think I follow the Polish league and Poland closer, to be honest, than England currently. But it should be interesting. I'd imagine that I might get some media offers if Poland do play England at some point during the tournament. But
it could be good.
Let's see what happens. Yeah.
So I do have one kind of other question, and that's, we mentioned how many players are playing outside of Poland, and we talked earlier or last summer, it's been almost a year now, about Bednarek coming over to the Premier League. And there are a lot of players that are exiting the extra class and playing at other leagues. And how important is this for some of those players who are going to make the squad, that play in Poland. How important is this for them to get out of Poland maybe and play at higher level? And I mean that respectfully. I don't mean any disrespect to the league, but how important is this for them and for the national team to get players out playing in the Bundesliga or playing in Serie A or playing elsewhere?
Well, I think that historically, basically, Polish players, because of the Cold War Iron Curtain, they weren't allowed to move until they were 30 to 32. I think they reduced it a little bit towards the end of the 1980s before the system fell apart. So historically, you couldn't move, right? So it was very difficult to. Then in the 90s, we got the first moves of people, leaving and going to other clubs. But basically, as the Bosman rule came in 2004, I think. When did Bosman come in? No, 95. But then then Poland entered the EU in 2004, which meant it incredibly easy for players to move around. It's been a massive drain of quality from the Polish league, which is one of the major issues really here in terms of someone who actually likes the league and watches it and gets excited by it. I think that that's a major issue, is that basically you get a lot of young players in the league and a lot of old players, but if you're in your mid-20s and you haven't left Poland, you're almost considered a failure. So I think that anyone who's playing in Poland will be looking to, to do well or to get in the squad and maybe come on if they're not starting or whatever and play 20 minutes to get a move somewhere. I mean,
okay.
Recently what's happened is that, as you can see in the chart you've made, that 9 players play in Italy. I think that what's happened is that a couple of players came over to Italy, did pretty well. People like Milik, Zielinski, Golubski's over there, and some other players. And I think that basically it started to become a trusted direction for Italian scouts. And obviously that means that Polish agents are desperately looking for those connections so that they can sell their clients over there. So, and I think that the jump up between the Polish league and the Italian league is not as high as the jump up between the Polish league and the English league or even the German league. So I think that it is important for Poland to have players playing in better leagues. But there's a kind of sort of bittersweetness to it, because what it means is that the domestic league is weakened to the extent that a lot of Poles are now watching Italian league, German league, Premier League to such an extent that it's a bit sad. I mean, I know that as you're an American who is watching the Premier League mostly. And I don't know what your relationship is to the MLS. Some people like it. Some people are very anti-MLS, I think, in the States. But it's, I suppose most American players, at least most of them play in the MLS, right? Most of them play in the MLS.
Yeah. And but I understand what you're saying. And I understand kind of the, maybe the Western bias and even asking the question the way I phrased it. And I hope people understand that. Yeah. But it's, playing in the MLS, there are very few players who make just an exorbitant amount of money. There are a lot of MLS players who make less money than I do, and I'm a school teacher, and that's just kind of the way it goes.
Yeah.
So if you want big money moves, you got to go elsewhere, and so to get out of here, and I think I'm one of the people that was always pushing and hoping that players would go elsewhere. Like when I see Christian Pulisic go to Borussia Dortmund, I think it's great. Go push yourself, go challenge yourself, go develop there. But the MLS is getting better. But like you said, if all of the talent leaves and it drains the home league, then people stop watching. It becomes less interesting and less competitive. And then you have this, you just have more of a desire to move if you're a young, talented player, because you don't want to play maybe in a league that's not respected. And so there are issues that go along with it. But yeah, I think it's interesting to see how many players are playing in Serie A right now, or are playing in Italy. And Italy's a very technical league. The players that go there seem to do very, very well. Krakowiak, I hope I've said that correctly, didn't have the best didn't have the best season in the Premier League on loan, but I think he'll go back to PSG hopefully and kind of kick on from there. So I don't know. And Bednarek seems to be holding his own for us, for Southampton. So which I'm more than happy with. So I think that the problem for me isn't the fact that top players go abroad, because I think that's inevitable. My problem is the fact that average players go abroad, and then what happens is you get the second or even third rung of sort of okay players also going young, and then recently a player who plays for Arka Gdynia, which were like 13th out of 16 in the Polish Ekstraklasa. One of their players who's pretty average, Marcianek he's called, and he basically is going to Empoli, which has just got promoted to Serie A, and it becomes a bit ridiculous because this guy is not a good player. Oh, he's an average player, and I don't know. I think that what happens is that the way that markets work is that it's all about routes that are well traveled, right? So once someone penetrates, then it's like we're looking for the same player. There's a kind of a mentality thing, there's an emotional connection as well about it. I still like the league. It's fun to watch. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right. Well, Chris, I want to thank you for your time, for agreeing to do this. And we didn't mention it, but congratulations on your recent marriage and all of the other changes that are going on. I wish you the best. And
thanks so much.
I'll be a little bit more interested in watching Poland. I'll pay a little bit extra attention. I'm teaching summer school this year, so that means that I will have the tablet on with all the games on. So I'll be interested to watch and kind of see how they do. They have friendlies coming up, of course. They got to cut the squad down, so lots of work for the manager still to do. But he's taking his time. He's being kind of pragmatic, and hopefully we see Poland kind of do that. And I think if Poland meet England at some stage, I think it'll be good for you. I think it'll be good for Poland. I think that's a match that can cause England some trouble. And I know any English listeners will now be hating me even more. But as an American whose family is from Italy and Norway, I don't have a dog in this fight at all. So this is totally fun to be able to kind of root for Poland. And so thanks for doing this, and I appreciate it.
No worries. You're welcome. And I hope the tournament is a fun one. Lots of goals, but maybe some defensive play as well. Not just like the Champions League this year.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. And just one more time, people can find you on Twitter at Rightbank Warsaw. We'll put the link in the show notes for both your Twitter and your blog and all that stuff. And so people can find it there and stay up to date with everything you have going on. And so thanks a lot, and we'll talk to you soon.
You're welcome. Thanks so much.
And that does it for this episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you enjoyed it. Obviously, this is not a normal show, but if you have any friends who are Saints fans, please consider passing this along. I would greatly appreciate that. Hopefully, if you are like me and from a country that is not involved in the World Cup at all, maybe this gives you a little bit more insight into the Polish squad and maybe what they're expecting, and we'll see how it goes. And for all you English fans, they may indeed come up against Poland in the knockout round, so we will wait and see for that. But special thanks goes out to Tactics FC for setting this all up, for allowing me the opportunity to be involved. I truly appreciate it. Be sure to follow Tactics FC. It's at Tactics_FC on Instagram, and the links to Twitter and all that stuff are in the show notes, so please go find them. Christopher Lash, also my guest. He's on Twitter at Rightbank Warsaw. Once again, the links to his website, his blog, and all that stuff are in the show notes. Please go give him a follow. He's a wonderful dude. Lots and lots of information on the Polish league, and special help on pronunciations with me. This week we worked on it before we ever got on the air, which is surprising if you listen to me try to say anything. So anyway, special thanks to Chris for taking time out of his day to speak with me. Thanks as always goes out to my partner, Jay Grant, who runs the Southampton page. For all your Southampton FC news and needs, be sure to visit the Southampton page. He's got all kinds of stuff going on both on Twitter and Instagram. And the logo for the show comes courtesy of the We Are Southampton page on Instagram. Matt, who runs the page, has been a friend of the show for a long time. He helped me out very early on. He's been a guest. So go find him, go follow him. You will not be disappointed in the edits and things that come out of that. Music for the show comes courtesy of the Free Music Archive at freemusicarchive.org. The intro song is Epic Song by Box Hat Games. The song you're listening to right now is Aim is True by Poddington Bear. You also heard the Polish national anthem. That came from Wiki Commons. The link to that is also in the show notes. As always, be sure to follow this show on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. We're at SFCDELL_IVERY on Instagram and Twitter, and we're at facebook.com/SFC Delivery. There is no underscore in the Facebook address. You can also subscribe to the feed on iTunes, Stitcher, Acast, Google Play, TuneIn Radio, or wherever else you listen to podcasts. Just simply search Delivery with 2 L's, DELLIVERY. That should bring it up. Hit subscribe, and you'll get each new episode as it comes out. We'll be back next week with another one. Until then, remember that together, we march on.